Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. It's Thursday, and if you are struggling to get your notifications, make sure you sign up for text notifications by going down there, and we'll text you before we go live or premiere or upload. Also, make sure you give this video a thumbs up if you love this kind of content, and subscribe over here if you want to subscribe. Welcome back to everyone else who is also either a member, subscriber, or just a longtime viewer. Okay, so were any of you guys obsessed with the Tiger King? I know I was. So obviously I watched the series on Netflix. It was on this winter. It happened right during the middle of quarantine. So it was, you know, something that captivated so many of us. And it was one of those documentaries where I was like, this is great, but what about the animals? You know what I'm saying? Like, you knew that there was these characters that were a part of this show, but there was nothing about like the welfare of the animals. Now, shortly after the Tiger King came out, it created this mass hysteria between, you know, who did you support, whether it was Joe Exotic or if it was Carole Baskin or if it was Jeff. You know, there was just so many people, so many scoundrels, and so much that happened. Now, we know that Exotic Joe is now behind the bars. He is hanging out there for about 22 years because he was convicted of setting things up for Miss Carole to be put away. And those two were in this heated dispute. And now it seems as though there is a new chapter. So if you want to know how these animals were cared for before we even get into this tea, Animal Planet actually did a video about Tiger King and sort of the aftermath of the animals, how the animals have been, like animals after Joe Exotic, and it's actually super sad. Like in the Animal Planet documentary, it's like one episode long, you see sort of the lack of care these animals received and the fact that there were so many of them and there wasn't enough space, they weren't being properly fed, they weren't being taken care of, and that would give you very good insight to what happened yesterday. So there has been, for years, they have been moving the animals from this zoo to other places as they've rescued them. There was a large rescue of wolves from Joe Exotic's place right around the time that Tiger King was filming. And at that time, they also rescued some of the lions. Now, and the tigers. Now, some of the lions and tigers were in such bad shape that they required a ton of rehabilitation and surgeries because they were not getting cared for while they were there on the property. And Joe would love to say that this was, people were just making this up. Like the animals, it was just the animal rights people that were going after him. There was nothing to see here. Everyone was taken care of. And yet you saw how they were fed, right? They got their Walmart food of expired beef and lunch meat, and that's what they ate, or old pizzas or whatever. You know, it was kind of deplorable. So obviously that whole put a ton of focus on that specific park in Oklahoma, which was done by Jeff Lowe. So in June, there was a couple things that happened. The USDA went out to the property and actually suspended them because they said that, or they fined them and gave them X amount of days to bring things up to standards. Basically what the USDA found was that they were improperly disposing of the carcasses. They were not, the animals were not getting proper veterinarian care. There was an overwrought amount of animals and not enough space. Some of the new cubs that were found like listless and lethargic. Some of them were like had like kidney infections, but they weren't even being taken to the vets. And so there was just a litany of issues. Even the way that they had their food taken, like how they stored the food, they claimed that they were storing it in a refrigerator, but the refrigerator was actually broken. And so their food that they were serving to these animals was spoiled. So they're not getting proper vet care, they're not getting proper nutrition, and the animals were they were suffering for it. So they issued this back in June, and then at the same time, if you remember, Carole and Joe Exotic were in the middle of this like defamation lawsuit where they were going back and forth because Joe had, you know, told everyone that Carole had fed her ex-husband to tigers. And she won her case against him, and she has been working on getting judgment. So she put judgments on against his mom, and she had a judgment out against his park. Well, now a judge has ordered that the actual zoo be handed over to Carole, because it's the only property left that is owned by Joe, even though Jeff has taken it over. So anyways, Carole Baskins will be getting property ownership of this zoo shortly. Now, this is interesting because then yesterday, the USDA actually suspended the license of Jeff and the park. And so they closed the park, and they said it was immediate, and it was going to be 21 days initially. And then if they still couldn't figure out and get things back up to par, then it would be permanently revoked. So they say that they didn't do anything that they needed to do. They didn't bring it up to standards. They didn't fix the things that they needed to fix. And Jeff actually took to Facebook, and he said that that's not true. He actually called the USDA to forfeit his license, and then the next day they told him that they were suspending him. So he put a post up on Facebook, and he says, the Tiger King phenomenon has definitely changed our lives in many ways. It has brought us more attention than any human deserves, good and bad. It has and probably will continue to make us a target of every nut job and animal rights person in the world, but we are prepared. It has also provided us with an unfathomable source of income that will guarantee that the long-term care of the animals will allow us to be very selective going forward. As of today, we have decided to close the zoo effective immediately. Due to the permanent closure of the Wynwood Zoo, I'm forfeiting my USDA exhibitor's license. The very agency that has given my facility the 5 consecutive perfect inspections has now folded to the pressures of PETA and continues to make false accusations against me. Suspiciously, less than 24 hours after I contacted the USDA to voluntarily forfeit my license, they notify me that they are suspending my license for 21 days for a litany of falsehoods. In the state of Oklahoma, exotic animal ownership is perfectly legal. Rest assured that all the animals will continue to have excellent care and consequently will no longer be subject to any inspections. And our new park will remain, at least for the foreseeable future, as a private film set for the Tiger King related content, which he says will go on to cable and streaming. So he claims that he gave it up, and the USDA says, well, we handed you this stuff back in June and you didn't fix it. And Carole Baskins is worried now because now the animals have no oversight in the middle of all of this. So he's forfeiting, and he's going to say, well, nobody can actually check these animals because it's perfectly legal for me to own them, and I'm not going to be selling them or showing them off to the public, so therefore I don't need to have a license. And that being said, I'm done. Except they can go back in 21 days to actually review everything. Even though he forfeited it, he can still, they're still going to go back, and then they can permanently revoke and be done with everything. So Carole is worried about the safety of the animals. PETA is actually super happy, obviously. And then the animal people that have been working in the state of Oklahoma to get this place closed are thrilled that that this zoo, which has been such a problem for so many years, will finally close. But they too are worried about the animals that are still left under Jeff's care. And when the local news was actually outside of the zoo yesterday, when they announced the closure, the cages were mostly empty. There appeared to be no animals there. So I don't know if they had moved the animals over to Jeff's new property. Either way, Jeff, I'm guessing, can't have animals, whether it's at this zoo or that zoo, because he can't take care of them at one zoo. I don't really understand that, but obviously this property in general and anything connected to this related to Joe Exotic is going to be handed over to Carole in only a few weeks. And then when she gets it, Jeff's gone. He's out. Which is probably why he's saying for the foreseeable future, because he won't have access to any of this anymore. This Tiger King story, I feel like, is going to continue forever. And it makes me wonder what's going to happen to these animals. There are so many of them that were at this park. Too many, way too many for them to care about. And it really, I wished so much that the documentary would have brought into more of the animal safety and the animal, what the animals were going through, instead of making it such a sideshow about Joe and Carole. But I understand that's what's going to sell tickets, or not even sell tickets, but get views, right? So at least now the people that have been fighting for these animals are happy it's closed, but then also apprehensive, because then they're saying there's no oversight and Jeff could still be doing things to these animals that are not good. And if you look it up and you find photos from the USDA report, it's not good. And if you want to get an insight into what the animals went through and really get an understanding of just how neglected they are, you need to check out the Animal Planet's documentary on Joe Exotic and the aftermath of the Tiger King animals. Okay, you guys, so are you shocked that this zoo is closed? Would you watch content by Jeff Lowe? Do you think Jeff will get fired for his part in Carole Baskin's scam? And do you think Carole Baskin's husband that's missing is smiling somewhere? And will Carole Baskins take this over and then burn it to the ground? I don't know. All right, you guys, tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Bye.